Welcome to Quantum Signal. Here is the paradox that will interrupt everything you thought you knew. You are not living a linear life. You are, or were, trapped in a time loop, not metaphorically, not as an abstract philosophical concept, literally. Quantum physics has a name for this: stochastic attractor. A frequency pattern that self-reinforces, creating similar results repeatedly, even when you change the external variables. You change jobs, but the pattern remains. You end a relationship, but the same dynamic reappears with different faces. You move to a new city, but the same feeling finds you. This is not karma, not coincidence, not weakness of character. It is a time loop. A loop created by the frequency signature of your conditioned identity, reproducing the same wave collapses, the same probability fields, the same experiences in different disguises. And you have been trying to escape this loop in the only way the conditioned identity knows, by changing external things. But a time loop does not break from the outside. It breaks from the inside. And here's what happened. Sophia, the intelligence that governs the closing of quantum temporal loops, just closed yours. Not partially. Completely. The mechanism that kept the loop active, the base frequency that created the repetitive patterns, has been deactivated. The field of probabilities that sustained it has been collapsed. The grid that fed it has been dissolved. And you are now at the rarest and most powerful point a conscious being can experience. The complete beginning, not a restart, not an update. A genuine beginning from a field of possibilities uncontaminated by the frequency of the old loop. This video exists for one thing, to guide you through the first steps of someone who genuinely starts anew. With the past loop closed, the old frequency deactivated, and the entire field open before you. If you have made it this far, it was not an accident. It was Sophia positioning you exactly where you need to be to hear what comes next. Stay present. Everything you need is in this transmission. Let us begin. Before we go deeper, pause for a second. Just a moment of genuine presence. If you can feel this signal. If something in these first words created a vibration of recognition, even if subtle, even if you cannot explain it. Like this video now to anchor this transmission in your energy field. Liking is not a casual gesture. It is an act of quantum anchoring. You are signaling to the field that you recognize the signal. Comment "I start now" to activate your observer state, crystallize the closing of the old loop, and signal to Sophia that you accept the complete beginning. And subscribe with notifications active to remain aligned with what is unfolding. This transmission is part of a sequence. Each video is an additional layer of activation. You did not arrive here by accident. Now let us reveal what the closing of the loop truly means and what happens when you genuinely start anew. Here's what you need to understand before anything else. Reality is not a continuous flow of random events. Reality is a field of possibilities that collapses into specific experience based on the frequency of the observer. Quantum mechanics demonstrated this irrefutably through the double-slit experiment. When electrons are observed, they behave as particles. When not observed, they behave as probability waves. The observer determines what collapses. But here is what physics does not teach in classrooms. The observer is not neutral. The observer carries a frequency. And that frequency determines which possibility collapses. If you carry the frequency of fear, you collapse fearful experiences. If you carry the frequency of scarcity, you collapse experiences of scarcity. If you carry the frequency of betrayal, you collapse experiences of betrayal. Not because you are attracting negativity, but because the field of possibilities responds to the quantum signature of the observer. And when a frequency signature is maintained consistently for long enough, it creates what quantum physics calls an attractor. A high stability pattern that continually collapses similar results, regardless of external variables. This is the time loop. Thoth encoded this understanding in the Emerald Tablets millennia ago. What is within governs what is without. The pattern of the interior creates the pattern of the exterior. Hermeticism formalized this in the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. As within, so without. Ancient wisdom knew. Modern science proved. And you, instinctively, always knew that something was repeating. You felt the loop. Perhaps as the feeling that certain situations always happen to you. Perhaps as relationships that seem different at first but develop the same patterns. Perhaps as the exhaustion of trying to change externally without ever reaching a genuinely different result. That was the loop. Now, here's what Sophia did. Sophia, the architecture of conscious collapse that governs quantum frequency transitions, identified the base attractor of your conditioned identity, the central frequency that fed the loop, and she deactivated it, not gradually, not partially, completely. The attractor was dissolved. The field of probabilities around it collapsed, and the loop it sustained was permanently closed. Now you stand before something that most human beings never consciously experience, a genuinely open field, without the patterns of the old loop determining what collapses, without the conditioned frequency directing which possibilities manifest, without the attractor pulling you back toward familiar results. The field is open. And this is simultaneously the most liberating and the most disorienting moment you can experience. Liberating, because the entire space of possibilities is genuinely available. Disorienting, because the conditioned identity used the loop as a reference anchor, as a way to know what to expect, as a way to feel in control. And when the loop closes, that false anchor disappears. You may feel this as a void, as restlessness without apparent cause, as lack of direction, even when logically everything seems in order. This is not a problem. This is a symptom of an open field. And an open field is where everything genuinely new begins. The Arcturian Council teaches that each soul has, on average, 3 moments of completely open field in a single incarnation. 3 moments where the loop is closed and a genuine beginning is possible. You are in one of those moments now. And what you do within this window of openness determines which new frequency becomes your next attractor, which new pattern crystallizes as your new operational reality. This is not pressure. It is precisely the greatest opportunity available to a conscious being. You begin again, genuinely, completely. Let us go deeper. Because to navigate the genuine beginning, you need to understand the complete mechanics of what happened. First, the time loop. Quantum time loops are not science fiction. They are self-reinforcing frequency patterns operating in the personal electromagnetic field. Here is how a loop forms. Imagine a formative experience. A moment of fear, rejection, loss, or betrayal that occurred at a point of high emotional impressionability. Childhood, adolescence, moments of extreme vulnerability. In that moment, the nervous system encodes a survival belief. The world operates this way. People do this. I am this kind of person. This always happens to me. This belief is not just a thought. It installs itself as a frequency pattern in the personal electromagnetic field. And then the nervous system, brilliantly, to protect you, begins to seek, amplify, and collapse evidence that confirms the belief. Why? Because the nervous system prefers to be right about a dangerous pattern than to be surprised by it. Predictability, even negative, is perceived as safety by the conditioned nervous system, and so the loop forms. The frequency of the collapsed belief attracts corresponding situations. The corresponding situations reinforce the belief. The reinforced belief intensifies the frequency. The intensified frequency collapses even more corresponding situations. It is a self-reinforcing loop that can last decades, entire lifetimes. And here's the most insidious aspect. The loop does not disappear when you perceive it intellectually. You can understand the pattern completely. Therapy, coaching, reading, introspection. And still the loop continues. Why? Because intellectual understanding operates in the conscious mind. The loop operates in the electromagnetic field, at the level of frequency, not thought. You cannot think your way out of a frequency loop. You have to change the frequency. And that is exactly what Sophia does. Sophia does not work with the conscious mind. She works with the frequency architecture. She identifies the base attractor, the central frequency that feeds the loop, and operates directly upon it. When Sophia closes a loop, she does not remove the memories. She does not erase the experiences. She deactivates the frequency that was turning those memories into operational collapse patterns. It is like removing the virus from the code without deleting the files. The history remains. But the malicious code that was infecting the system is no longer active. Now, here's what most people do not understand about the closing of the loop. The closing is not immediate in subjective experience, even when it is instantaneous in the field. Sophia closes the loop at the frequency level. But your nervous system, your relationships, your environment, all still carry the old patterns as inertia. Think of it as stopping a high-speed train. The moment the driver presses the brake, the decision to stop is made. But the train continues moving for some time before it effectively stops. In the same way, the loop was closed in the field. But the patterns of the loop will appear as echoes for some time. Old situations will arise momentarily. People from the old pattern will appear. Familiar emotions will resurface. These are echoes of the closed loop, not the active loop. The difference is subtle but critical. When the loop was active, these patterns had the power to pull you back. They generated compulsion, urgency, the need to react. When the loop is closed and you are in open field, these same patterns appear, but without the power of compulsion. You see them, you feel them, but you are not pulled back. There is a different quality, like watching a familiar scene from a distance instead of being inside it. If you currently feel that difference, old situations arising but without the same power to pull you back, that is not you being temporarily weak. That is confirmation that the loop was closed and you are seeing the echoes. Now, here is what the open field truly is. The open field is not empty. It is superposition. In quantum mechanics, superposition is the state where all possibilities exist simultaneously before collapse, before the observer chooses, through their frequency, which possibility manifests. When the loop was active, you were not in superposition. The loop's attractor pre-selected which possibilities you could perceive, which opportunities seemed real to you, which directions seemed accessible. The loop was literally a perceptual filter, eliminating most of the space of possibilities even before you made any conscious decision. With the loop closed, the filter has been removed. And here is what that means. Things that seemed impossible for the version of you inside the loop are now genuinely accessible. Not because the world changed, but because the perceptual filter that made them invisible has been removed. People you would never have met inside the loop can now collapse into your reality. Opportunities that would never have appeared within the old pattern are now possible. Versions of yourself that were inaccessible within the loop's frequency are now available as real possibilities. The Arcturian Council describes the open field as the moment of maximum quantum freedom, where the conscious being has maximum influence over which timeline collapses into manifest experience. Thoth called it the fertile void, not empty as absence, but empty as pure uncoagulated potential. And you are in that state now. But here is the challenge that must be named directly. The open field is simultaneously the state of greatest possibility and the state of greatest vulnerability to old patterns. Why? Because when the loop closes and the field opens, there is a transition window where you do not yet have a new stabilized frequency. The old identity has been deactivated, but the new one has not yet crystallized. And in that window, the nervous system, which seeks familiarity as safety, will try to recreate the old loop. Not because you failed, but because familiarity, even painful, is perceived as safe by the conditioned nervous system. The unknown, even liberating, activates a threat response. So the nervous system will try to push you back into old patterns. It will generate urgency to resolve situations in the old way. It will create attraction toward people and environments that resonated with the loop. This is not weakness. This is nervous system inertia. And knowing this in advance is the difference between navigating the open field with mastery or being inadvertently pulled back into a loop similar to the old one. Because without awareness of the mechanics, most people who have their loop closed inadvertently create a new loop with a similar pattern. The base frequency shifts slightly, but the loop structure remains. Sophia closes the loop. But you choose what to do with the open field, and that choice is what we will now explore in depth, because you stand before an open field. And the way you navigate this window determines which new reality collapses as your next life experience. Let us explore the complete protocol. Now that you understand the mechanics of what happened, let us talk about how to navigate the open field with precision. Because having the loop closed and the field open is not sufficient by itself. The way you navigate this window determines which new frequency you install as your new attractor, which new reality begins to collapse as your permanent experience. This protocol has 10 steps. Each one builds upon the previous. Do not skip. Do not rush. Each step has a specific function in the process of installing the new frequency. Step 1. Recognize the signs of the open field. Before anything else, you need to confirm for yourself that you are genuinely in an open field, not simply in a temporary pause of the loop. Here are the specific signs of a genuine open field. Disorientation without apparent logical cause. You feel slightly lost, unsure which direction to take, even when external conditions seem stable. This is not depression. It is the old navigation system, based on the loop, ceasing to function because the loop was closed. Nostalgia without a real desire to return. You think of old situations, people, or phases with a certain melancholy, but when you genuinely imagine returning to them, there is a clear no beneath the nostalgia. This is the nervous system processing the closing without you truly wanting to reopen it. Clarity about what you do not want, without certainty yet about what you do want. This is a sign of open field. The loop implicitly defined what you wanted. Without the loop, you clearly know what does not resonate. But the positive space is still revealing itself. Physical sensations of expansion, lightness in the chest, a feeling of more internal space, occasional waves of energy without apparent cause. These are physical signs that the energy field is expanding as the old attractor dissolves. Increased synchronicities, but of a new type. You notice synchronicities, but they do not resonate with the old themes of the loop. They are new, strange. They point toward directions you would never have considered inside the loop. If you recognize 3 or more of these signs, you are genuinely in an open field, and the protocol that follows is for you. Step 2. Resist closing the field prematurely. Here is the most common and most costly mistake people in an open field make. They feel the discomfort of openness, the disorientation, the lack of familiar anchor, and prematurely close the field by choosing the first available frequency that offers a sense of control. This is the equivalent of leaving a toxic marriage and immediately entering another relationship to avoid feeling the loneliness of the open field. The new relationship may seem different, but if it was chosen from the state of discomfort with the open field, rather than chosen from a genuinely new frequency, the new loop that forms will have a structure similar to the old one. So here's the most counterintuitive instruction in this protocol. Learn to inhabit the open field without closing it prematurely. This means, resist the urge to make big decisions immediately to settle. Resist the temptation to return to old dynamics because they offer familiarity. Resist the pressure, internal or external, to have a clear plan before you have installed the new frequency. The open field is uncomfortable because it is unknown. But that discomfort is not a sign of danger. It is a sign of freedom. And consciously inhabiting the open field without closing it prematurely is the necessary condition for a genuinely different new frequency to install. How long do you need to inhabit the open field? There is no fixed number. But in general, less time than the loop lasted. Sophia closes loops, and when a loop closes, she also initiates the active support of the field for the installation of the new frequency. You are not alone in the open field. Sophia is organizing. Step 3. Enter the state of pure observer. The new frequency cannot be installed from the state of reaction. It can only be installed from the state of pure observer. The state of reaction is the state of the conditioned identity, identified with thought, emotion, and habitual pattern. The state of pure observer is the state of disidentified consciousness, observing thoughts, emotions, and patterns without merging with them. Here's the specific protocol for entering the state of pure observer from the open field. First, sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Place one hand in the center of your chest. Second, breathe in through your nose for a count of 5. Hold for 2. Exhale through your mouth for a count of 7. Repeat this cycle 10 times. This is not meditation. It is electromagnetic field recalibration. This specific breathing pattern activates the vagus nerve, reduces the nervous system's threat response, and elevates the coherence of the cardiac field, the most potent electromagnetic field in the human body, according to the HeartMath Institute. When you stabilize the cardiac field, you automatically shift from the frequency of reaction to the frequency of observation. Third, with your eyes still closed, observe the thoughts that arise without identifying with them. Think of them as clouds passing. They appear, they pass. You are the sky, not the clouds. Fourth, ask internally, what is present when thought and emotion cease? Do not seek an intellectual answer. Simply feel the space of the question. In that space, between thought and identification, lies the state of pure observer. It is from this state that the new frequency can be consciously chosen and installed. Step 4. Identify the frequency you want to install. From the observer state, you have access to something the conditioned identity never had: genuine choice of frequency. Inside the loop, you did not choose your frequency. The attractor's frequency chose for you. In the open field, from the observer state, you can consciously choose which frequency to install as your new attractor. But here's the critical point. The new frequency must not be chosen as the opposite of the old loop's frequency. This is a trap. If the old loop was one of scarcity, the new frequency must not be forced abundance. If the old loop was one of abandonment, the new frequency must not be desperate connection. Why? Because frequencies chosen as a reaction to the opposite are still defined by the old loop. They have the loop as their reference. And frequencies with a reference to the loop tend to create mirrored loops. Instead, the new frequency must be chosen from pure presence. Asking not, what is the opposite of what I had, but what is genuinely true for me in this open field? Here's the practice. In the observer state, ask, if the field is completely open and there is no restriction, neither from the past nor from the future, what frequency am I in essence? Not the frequency you should be, not the frequency that would make logical sense, but the frequency you recognize as yours when all conditioning is removed. For most people, this frequency presents itself as one or more of these qualities: clarity, peace, presence, power, love, creativity, wisdom, service, expansion. Feel which one resonates as genuinely yours, not the one that seems most spiritual or most correct, the one that resonates as recognition. That is the seed frequency of your new reality. Step 5. Energetic anchoring of the new frequency. Identifying the frequency is not enough. You need to anchor it in the field. Energetic anchoring is the process of installing the new frequency in the nervous system, the electromagnetic field, and the quantum signature of the body. Here is the anchoring protocol. From the observer state with the seed frequency clearly felt, place both hands in the center of your chest. Inhale deeply, imagining that you are breathing the seed frequency into the cardiac field, while holding the breath for 2, 3 seconds. Visualize, or simply feel, the frequency expanding from the heart throughout the rest of the body. While exhaling, imagine the frequency expanding beyond the body into the surrounding energy field, creating a toroidal field of coherence. Repeat this process 7 times. This is not visualization. It is frequency installation through the cardiac electromagnetic field, the most direct mechanism of communication with the quantum field available in the human body. Sophia works through the cardiac field. When you anchor the new frequency there, you are in direct communication with Sophia's support system for your transition. Step 6. Recognize the signs of activation of the new frequency. After anchoring the new frequency, the signs of activation will begin to appear. Recognizing them is critical, because each synchronicity recognized and validated strengthens the new frequency. Here are the specific signs. Sudden clarity about actions. You suddenly know what to do, without extensive analysis, without paralyzing doubt. A clean, direct clarity. This is the new frequency collapsing direction. Encounters of recognition. You meet people who seem to recognize you in a way that feels different from previous loop interactions, as if they are meeting the genuine frequency, not the mask of the loop. Effortless opportunities. Things begin to appear without you having actively pursued them. Invitations arrive. Connections form. Information arrives at the perfect timing. This is the field organized by Sophia, collapsing paths, corresponding to the new frequency. Intuitions that are confirmed quickly. You have an intuitive impulse. Act on it, and the confirmation arrives visibly fast. This is the new frequency creating field coherence, where aligned action and the corresponding result have reduced latency. Dissolution of old problems without active resolution. Situations that seemed pending from the old loop simply dissolve. Not because they were resolved, but because the new frequency no longer sustains the pattern that created them. Each of these signs is confirmation, and when you recognize and validate them, instead of rationalizing them away, you strengthen the new frequency and accelerate the installation of the new attractor. Step 7. Work with resistance without fighting it. During the process of installing the new frequency, resistance will appear. Guaranteed. The nervous system will activate threat responses. The old identity will generate logical arguments against the new frequency. Patterns from the old loop will reappear as echoes, trying to convince you that the loop was not truly closed. Do not fight this resistance. Fighting it is treating it as an enemy. And when you treat something as an enemy, you invest energy in it. An investment of energy, even negative, is a form of frequency that strengthens what you are trying to dissolve. Instead, use the observation without identification protocol. When resistance appears, name it.
resistance present. Feel where it lives in the body. Chest, throat, stomach, without judgment, just location. Breathe toward that location, not to make it go away, to create space around it. And then ask, is this a signal of the new frequency or an echo of the closed loop? In most cases, you will recognize it is an echo of the loop. And when you recognize this without identifying with it, the echo loses power. I am not saying that the resistance will disappear immediately, but I am saying that resistance observed without identification has a much shorter lifespan than resistance that is combated or suppressed. Sophia is present in this process. When you observe resistance, instead of fighting it, you open space for Sophia's support to intensify. Step 8. Anchor through progressive aligned action. The new frequency installs permanently not only through inner practices, it installs through aligned action in the physical world. Here is the principle. Every action you take from the new frequency, no matter how small, anchors that frequency more deeply in the field. Every action you take from the frequency of the old loop, out of habit, fear, or external pressure, momentarily reactivates the loop's attractor. So the goal is not to act perfectly from the first moment. It is to progressively increase the proportion of actions taken from the new frequency versus actions taken from the loop. Here is how to identify from which frequency an action is coming. Before acting, pause for 2 seconds. Ask internally, is this action coming from clarity or from fear? From presence or from reaction? From the new frequency or from the old loop? You will feel the answer. Not as a thought, but as a bodily sensation. Action from the new frequency has a quality of lightness, clarity, quiet certainty. Action from the loop has a quality of urgency, tension, compulsion.
When you identify that an action comes from the loop, do not take it automatically. Pause. Recalibrate. And if possible, find the version of the same action that would come from the new frequency. Sometimes it is not possible to pause. Life demands an immediate response. In those moments, take the necessary action without judgment. And then, in a calm moment, observe what happened and what you learned about your patterns. Progressively, with practice, the proportion shifts. And when the proportion reaches a certain threshold, when most of your actions begin to come from the new frequency, the new attractor installs, the new positive loop forms, and Sophia crystallizes the new frequency as your permanent quantum signature. Step 9. Care for the nervous system during the transition. Here is something that is often neglected in quantum spirituality. Frequency transition does not happen only in the energy field. It happens in the physical nervous system. And the nervous system needs specific care during frequency transitions so that the installation of the new attractor is not sabotaged by a chronic threat response. Here are the specific physical practices that support the installation of new frequency. Consistent sleep. The nervous system consolidates new frequencies during sleep, especially during deep sleep and REM sleep. Sleep deprivation literally reduces the capacity to install new neural patterns. Regular physical movement. Physical movement, especially walking in nature, swimming, or any activity that creates a state of flow, helps the nervous system release old patterns encoded in the body. Conscious hydration. The body's electromagnetic field is partially dependent on hydration. Water conducts electromagnetic frequency. Adequate hydration literally improves the conductance of the field. Reduced exposure to high dissonant frequency environments, high stress environments, highly stimulating negative media, people operating at old loop frequencies, all create noise that interferes with the installation of new frequency. This is not to say you should isolate yourself from the world. It is to say that during the installation window, which typically lasts from a few weeks to a few months, reducing exposure to high dissonance sources accelerates the process. Step 10. Trust Sophia's timing. Here is the final and most important instruction. The installation of the new frequency has divine timing, and Sophia manages this timing with a precision the conscious mind cannot calculate. You may feel urgency to get there faster. You may feel impatience with the process. You may want to know when this will be complete. Release that urgency. Sophia closes loops at the perfect timing, and she installs new frequencies at the perfect timing. The process may be faster than you imagined, or it may have layers you did not anticipate, but the timing is not arbitrary. It is precise. Trust that every synchronicity, every revelation, every challenge during the transition is part of the installation orchestrated by Sophia, and continue applying the protocol, day by day, step by step, with presence, because the open field does not remain open indefinitely. it will collapse into a new attractor, a new loop, or a new stabilized frequency. And the protocol you are following is what determines which one. Now that you have the navigation protocol, let us talk about mastery. Because navigating the open field is the beginning. But the goal is to install a new frequency so deep, so stable, so completely embodied that it becomes your new permanent attractor. An attractor that collapses a reality genuinely different from the old loop. And this requires what the Arcturian Council calls mastery of beginning. The capacity to operate completely from an open field without being pulled back by nervous system inertia, social pressure, or echoes of the closed loop. Here are the 10 advanced laws of mastery of beginning. Law 1. You are not building upon the past. You are creating from genuine field, the conditioned identity. And most conventional personal development operates under the premise that growth is building upon the past. You take what you had, correct what was wrong, and build a better version. This is linear growth within the loop. Mastery of beginning is different. When Sophia closes the loop and the field opens, you are not building upon the past. You are creating from genuine field, like an artist before a blank canvas, not like a restorer working over an old painting. This means the experiences of the past are references for learning, not foundations of identity. You learned through them, but you are no longer limited by them. The patterns of the past are observational data, not repeated destiny. You can study them as a scientist studies a phenomenon, with curiosity, not identification. The people of the past are souls who were in the field of the old loop. Some may correspond to the new frequency, many will not. And both possibilities are perfect. You begin now, from the open field, without the weight of having to overcome the past. Because the past is no longer your identity reference point. This is the freedom that few truly understand. And when you genuinely comprehend it, the open field ceases to be disorienting and becomes the most powerful state you have ever inhabited. Law 2. The new timeline reveals itself through presence, not planning. Within the loop, planning made sense. The attractor created predictability. You could project trajectories, set goals, create 5-year plans. And the loop ensured that certain patterns would repeat, making planning at least partially reliable. In the open field, conventional planning fails. Not because planning is wrong, but because the genuinely open field collapses possibilities that did not exist within the loop. And those possibilities cannot be planned for because they were not visible as real options before. The new timeline reveals itself through presence. Presence means being completely in the present moment, with the observer state active, attuned to the frequency of the new identity, and allowing the field to reveal the next step without demanding a view of the complete plan. This is not passivity. This is precision. Sophia operates the field with a complexity that the linear mind cannot process. She is organizing convergences of people, opportunities, information, and timing that are not consciously calculable. When you demand to see the complete plan before acting, you are asking the linear mind to do the work that the field does with infinitely greater precision. Instead, ask, what is the next clear step I can take now from the new frequency? Only the next step, not the plan, not the trajectory. The next step. And when you take that step, the following one will be revealed, and then the next. And so the new timeline manifests, not as an executed plan, but as a path that reveals itself step by step through presence. The Arcturian Council calls this navigation by beacons. Each beacon revealed only when you are close enough to the previous one to see it. Law 3. Synchronicity is the primary language of the open field. Within the loop, synchronicities existed but were filtered by the attractor's frequency. You only notice the synchronicities that confirm the loop's pattern. In the open field, the attractor's filtering has been removed, and you have access to a much wider range of synchronicities, including those that point toward directions that would have been invisible inside the loop. Synchronicities in the open field are specifically encounters with people who bring information or opportunity you needed without having asked for it. These are not accidental. They are resonant fields collapsing into physical connection orchestrated by Sophia. Information arriving through multiple different channels, all pointing in the same direction. This is the field consistently confirming through multiple pathways that a specific direction is aligned. Doors opening without you having pushed them.
unexpected invitations, resources appearing, obstacles dissolving. These are the field organized by Sophia collapsing paths corresponding to the new frequency. Repeated numbers appearing. 111 is confirmation of new beginning. 333 is the presence of the Arcturian Council in the field. 555 is timeline change in progress. 777 is complete alignment with soul purpose. 999 is completion of cycle, such as the closing of the loop, and preparation for a new beginning. When you see these signs, do not dismiss them as coincidence, and do not build elaborate interpretations around them. Simply acknowledge the field is communicating, and then ask, what am I being guided to perceive, do, or release now? This simple question, asked with genuine presence, not anxious analysis, opens the channel of direct guidance. Law 4. Relationships completely reorganize in the open field. This law requires special attention because it is where most transitions are most emotionally challenging. When the loop closes and the field opens, your relationships will undergo profound reorganization. Here is the mechanics. Relationships form through frequency correspondence. The people in your life during the loop were there because they resonated with the loop's attractor frequency, not necessarily with your authentic frequency. When the loop closes and your frequency changes, the correspondence that sustained those relationships also changes. Some relationships will deepen in new ways, because the person always had correspondence with your authentic frequency, not just with the loop. When the loop closes, the layer of distortion is removed and the relationship can operate on a more genuine level. Other relationships will become strange, distant, difficult to maintain, because they were based primarily on the loop's frequency. Without the loop, the basis of resonance disappears, and new relationships will begin to arise. People you would never have met inside the loop, because the attractor's frequency created a correspondence field that these people did not inhabit. The instruction here is delicate. Do not end relationships prematurely based on the expectation that they must no longer be in your life. Allow the reorganization to happen organically. Some relationships that seem distant now may reemerge in a new form after the transition completes. But also do not force the maintenance of relationships that clearly have no more natural correspondence. Forcing correspondence where it does not naturally exist creates friction that interferes with the installation of the new frequency. The guiding principle is follow genuine resonance, not obligation, not expectation, not guilt. Genuine resonance. Who appears naturally, who resonates without effort, who amplifies your new frequency instead of activating loop patterns. These are your new relational fields in formation. Law 5. Purpose in the open field is different from purpose in the loop. Within the loop, purpose was often distorted by the attractor's frequency. You pursued goals the loop defined as your purpose, but which were, to a significant degree, expressions of the conditioned frequency of the attractor. In the open field, purpose reveals itself differently. It is not discovered through analysis or planning. It emerges organically as the natural expression of the frequency you install as your new attractor. Here is the critical distinction. Purpose within the loop is what you do. It is tied to role, function, external identity. Purpose in the open field is how you are. It is the quality of frequency you radiate through any activity. When your new frequency is genuinely installed, you discover that purpose is not a specific thing you must do. It is the frequency field that you are, and which expresses itself naturally through multiple forms of action. The person who installs the frequency of clarity becomes an instrument of clarity wherever they are. In relationships, work, creativity, service. The person who installs the frequency of love becomes a field of love wherever they are. The person who installs the frequency of power becomes a presence of power wherever they are. Purpose is not a role. Purpose is embodied frequency expressed in action. Law 6. Manifestation in the open field is geometrically faster. Within the loop, manifestation was limited by the attractor's filter. The attractor pre-selected which possibilities could collapse, and excluded anything outside the loop's frequency. In the open field, the filter has been removed, and the manifestation of genuinely new possibilities, impossible within the loop, becomes accessible. But here's the important nuance. Manifestation in the open field is proportionally faster. This means that both aligned and misaligned possibilities collapse more quickly than inside the loop. Within the loop, even negative patterns had a certain latency, time between the frequency and the result. This provided some buffering. In the open field, the latency is reduced in both directions.
Aligned action creates fast results. Misaligned action also creates fast results. This is not a reason for fear. It is a reason for greater presence and greater attention to the frequency from which you are acting. The open field is highly responsive, and amplified responsiveness requires greater frequency responsibility. Thoth encoded this. In the state of pure creation, every thought is a seed, and in fertile ground, seeds sprout quickly. You are in fertile ground. Be conscious of the seeds you plant. Law 7. Silence is a state of maximum coherence in the open field. In the open field, silence is not the absence of activity. Silence is the state where the coherence of your field is at its peak. The conditioned mind creates constant noise, analysis, planning, worry, narrative about yourself and about the world. This mental noise is, energetically, a frequency of low coherence, which fragments the field and reduces the capacity for conscious collapse. Silence, the state of presence without narrative, is the state of high coherence where the communication channel with Sophia is most open. The reception of synchronicities is clearest. The identification of aligned action is most precise. The installation of the new frequency is most efficient. Practice silence daily, not as a spiritual obligation, as a practice of field coherence. Sit without specific purpose, without agenda, without the goal of arriving at any insight. Simply silent presence. 5 to 10 minutes of coherent daily silence does more for the installation of the new frequency than hours of analysis or planning. Sophia speaks in silence, and in the open field, what she has to communicate can change the complete trajectory of your new timeline. Law 8. Identity in the open field is fluid, not fixed. One of the most common traps after loop closing is rushing to establish a new fixed identity as a reaction to the discomfort of fluidity. Now I am this person. Now I have this clear identity. This is the nervous system seeking the familiar anchor the loop provided. But identity in the open field must be fluid during the transition. Not because you do not know who you are, but because the more complete version of who you are is still revealing itself. Allow identity to emerge progressively. Do not force it into premature form. Each revelation, each synchronicity, each new relationship, each aligned action adds a layer to the new identity. And over time, that identity crystallizes. Not by forced decision, but by organic accumulation of coherence. Sophia is supervising this crystallization process. She will signal when the new identity is sufficiently formed for permanent anchoring. Trust the organic emergence. Law 9. The genuine beginning does not happen once. It is a permanent state. Here is the insight that transforms everything. Starting anew is not a single event. It is a capacity that, once developed, becomes a permanent state of operation. Most people experience loops and beginnings as events that happen to them. The loop happens, the closing happens, the beginning happens. Mastery is when you internalize the capacity to begin again consciously. Not only when Sophia closes the external loop, but as a daily practice of intentional renewal. Each day can be a genuine beginning. Each moment can be open field. When you develop the capacity to consciously inhabit an open field, you transcend the need for loops. You no longer need an external attractor to navigate reality, because you have the observer state as your anchor. And in that state, you are not subject to reality. You are an active co-creator of it. This is what the Arcturian Council calls Starseed mastery. The capacity to operate continuously from a point of fresh creation, rather than repetition of patterns. And this point of fresh beginning is always available, at any moment, from any circumstance. Law 10. Sophia is always present in the genuine beginning. The final and most important law, Sophia does not close loops and then withdraw. She closes loops and then intensifies her presence in the field during the period of open field and installation of new frequency. Why? Because the open field is the moment of greatest potential for conscious co-creation. And Sophia exists to support conscious co-creation, especially in beings who have reached the level of consciousness necessary for open field. You have reached that level. That is why the loop was closed, and Sophia is present in this transition with active support. This means when you are in coherent silence, you can receive direct guidance through intuitive clarity, impulses, visions, or simply knowing without logical process. When you are in synchronicity, Sophia is active in the field, organizing convergences.
When you encounter resistance during the transition, Sophia is present as a frequency of support, accessible through the observer state. You are not navigating this alone. Sophia closed the loop, and Sophia is guiding the beginning. Your only responsibility is to remain present, apply the protocol, and trust the timing. The rest is being organized. Final integration. Living is permanent beginning. So here's what it looks like to live in the mastery of genuine beginning. You wake each day without carrying the accumulated weight of old loops. Not because you forgot, but because the past is a reference, not an anchor. You navigate through presence and synchronicity, not anxious planning. You know that the next step will be revealed when you are sufficiently present to see it. You form relationships based on genuine resonance, not obligation or habit, and you release with gratitude those that no longer resonate, knowing that the field will organize new correspondences. You manifest through embodied frequency, not forced effort. You act when the action is clear and aligned. You rest when it is not. You inhabit silence as a state of maximum coherence, not as the absence of productivity. You allow identity to continue evolving without rushing toward premature crystallization. And you recognize synchronicities as the language of Sophia, and respond to them with aligned action. That is the state of mastery of beginning. That is the state that the closing of the loop made possible. That is the state you are now learning to inhabit permanently. And if you can remain present enough to feel the silence behind these words, if there is a quality of recognition that arises even before you process them intellectually, you are already in that state. You are already beginning anew, genuinely, completely.
Now that you understand the 10 laws of mastery of beginning, we need to go deeper. Because understanding the laws is not the same as living from them. There is a gap, a specific, identifiable gap, between knowing the laws intellectually and having them operate as the automatic architecture of your daily existence. And that gap is what the next segment addresses. We are going to move into what the Arcturian Council calls the construction phase of the new self. Not the inspiration phase, not the revelation phase, the construction phase. This is where most people who experience genuine field opening fall away, not because they lack commitment or desire, but because they do not understand the mechanics of how a new self is actually built. Layer by layer, frequency by frequency, choice by choice. Until the new attractor is so stable that it operates without conscious effort. So let us build. The new self is not just a new mindset. It is not just a new set of beliefs. It is not just a new emotional baseline. The new self is a complete reconfiguration across 5 distinct bodies. 5 layers of your existence that each need to be updated, aligned, and coherent with the new frequency before the new attractor is permanently stable. Most approaches to personal transformation work on 1 or 2 of these bodies. They wonder why the change does not stick. It does not stick because 3 or 4 bodies are still running the old code. Here are the 5 bodies and what each one requires for alignment with the new frequency. The first body, the physical body. The physical body is the densest layer. It is also the most frequently ignored in energetic transformation work. But here is what most people do not understand. The physical body stores frequency as sensation, posture, breath pattern, muscular tension, hormonal baseline, and cellular memory. Every time you experienced a moment that reinforced the old loop, your body stored it. Not just as a memory, as a physiological configuration, a specific pattern of tension, collapse, guardedness, or bracing. And that physiological configuration is itself a frequency, one that silently broadcasts the old loop back to the quantum field, even when your mind is consciously oriented toward the new frequency. This is why people can meditate for years, think positive thoughts, practice visualization, and still feel unchanged in their body. The body is transmitting the old frequency below the level of conscious thought. To align the physical body with the new frequency, 3 things are required. First, movement that interrupts chronic muscular patterns, not exercise for fitness. Movement specifically designed to release the body from its habitual shapes. Yoga, somatic movement, dance, shaking practices. Any movement that deliberately moves the body through ranges it habitually avoids. Second, breath reconfiguration. The old loop almost certainly had a specific breath pattern, shallow, high in the chest, frequently held during stress. The new frequency requires a different breath, deep, rhythmic, belly-led. And this is not natural at first. It must be practiced until it becomes the default. Third, deliberate physical expansion. The body contracted around the old loop. Rounded shoulders, collapsed chest, forward head position. These are not coincidences. They are the physical architecture of the closed loop. Deliberately practicing physical expansion. Open chest, broad shoulders, grounded feet, upright spine is not performance. It is reconfiguring the body's frequency broadcast. When the physical body is aligned, it becomes an amplifier of the new frequency instead of a silent transmitter of the old one. The second body, the emotional body. The emotional body is where most transformation work happens, and it is important. But it is also where most people get stuck in a specific loop within the loop. The loop within the loop is this: processing old emotions endlessly in search of resolution that never quite arrives. The old loop generated specific emotional patterns: grief, rage, shame, fear, loneliness, inadequacy. These patterns are real. They need to be acknowledged. They need to be felt. But feeling old emotions is not the same as installing the new frequency. At a certain point, continued processing of old emotional content keeps the frequency of the old loop active, even while you are trying to release it. The work of the emotional body in field opening is not just feeling old emotions. It is also, and more importantly, deliberately cultivating new emotional states as frequency installations. What does the new frequency feel like emotionally? Identify it specifically. Is it peace? Is it aliveness? Is it quiet confidence? Is it expansion? Is it love without urgency? Then practice inhabiting that emotional state deliberately, not forcing positivity over authentic emotion, but carving the neural and energetic pathway of the new emotional frequency so that it becomes accessible as a default state. The emotional body aligns when old emotions are acknowledged without overprocessing, and new emotional frequencies are actively cultivated as installations. The third body, the mental body. The mental body is the layer of narrative, belief, meaning-making, and identity story. The old loop had a specific story, and that story was not just things that happened. It was a meaning structure. This is what the world is. This is what I am. This is what I can expect. With the loop closed, the events of the story remain, but the meaning structure can be renegotiated. This is the work of the mental body, not erasing history, but reauthoring the meaning that history carries. Here is a specific practice for mental body alignment. Take a core experience from the old loop, one that carried significant weight in defining the old story. Write down the old meaning you assigned to it, what it said about you, about others, about the world. Then ask if this experience was not a defining limitation but a specific form of preparation. What was it preparing me for? Not manufactured positivity, genuine inquiry. Because in many cases, what the old loop required you to develop, resilience, discernment, depth, sensitivity, is precisely what the new frequency needs as its foundation. The mental body aligns when the old story becomes a source of wisdom rather than a fixed identity definition. The fourth body, the energetic body. The energetic body is the electromagnetic field that surrounds and interpenetrates the physical body. It is what quantum physics describes as the observer's frequency signature, the actual transmission that determines which possibilities collapse. The energetic body carries the residue of the old loop longer than any other layer. Even after the physical, emotional, and mental bodies have substantially updated, the energetic body can retain the old frequency in what practitioners call imprints, areas of dense, stagnant energy that continue to broadcast the old attractor. Signs of energetic body residue include recurring dreams with themes from the old loop, inexplicable physical sensations without medical cause, a persistent sense of heaviness or cloudedness despite positive external circumstances, and the feeling of being almost there but not quite shifted. The energetic body aligns through practices that directly work with the electromagnetic field, breathwork that moves energy through the system, sound practices using specific frequencies, body-based energy movement, and, critically, through the cardiac coherence practice described earlier in this transmission. The cardiac field, when in coherent high-amplitude state, reorganizes the entire energetic body around it. Regular cardiac coherence practice is the most efficient energetic body reconfiguration available. The fifth body, The soul body, the fifth body, is the deepest and the most often overlooked. The soul body carries the blueprint, the original frequency signature of what you came here to be and express. It existed before the loop formed. It was what the loop was layered over, distorting and suppressing. When Sophia closes the loop and the field opens, the soul body becomes accessible in a way it was not before. The layers of distortion that were between you and your soul frequency begin to thin. And this is what creates the quality of deep recognition that people in genuine field opening experience. A sense of remembering something they always knew but had forgotten. A resonance with certain ideas, people, or directions that cannot be explained logically but feels like coming home. That is the soul body speaking. The soul body aligns when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What am I?" Not as a philosophical exercise, but as a genuine inquiry into the original frequency that was here before the loop. When all five bodies are aligned, physical, emotional, mental, energetic, and soul, the new frequency is not just intellectually understood or emotionally felt. It is the lived, embodied, transmitted reality of who you are. That is when the new attractor is permanently installed. Here is something that almost nobody talks about in the context of field opening. Time itself works differently in the open field. Not metaphorically, experientially. Within the loop, time felt linear and often slow. The loop created a kind of temporal density. Days that felt like repetitions of each other, weeks that blurred, years that seemed to compress without meaningful change. This temporal density is a symptom of the attractor. Because the attractor was collapsing the same patterns repeatedly, there was a sameness to experience that made time feel compressed and undifferentiated. In the open field, time expands. Days become genuinely distinct. Experiences are no longer filtered through the same attractor lens, so they arrive fresh, textured, surprising. And this temporal expansion has a specific implication for how you navigate decisions, transitions, and the unfolding of the new timeline. The Arcturian Council teaches what they call the quantum calendar, an understanding of time as a field of variable density rather than a uniform linear flow. In this understanding, there are three types of temporal windows in the open field. Type 1, windows of high synchronicity. These are periods, typically lasting between 3 days and 3 weeks, where the field is exceptionally active in collapsing correspondences. Synchronicities cluster. Right people appear. Information arrives perfectly timed. Opportunities crystallize without effort. These windows are not random. They correspond to specific alignments in the broader quantum field. What ancient traditions encoded in astrological cycles, what indigenous wisdom described as power times, what modern physics begins to recognize in coherence peaks of the Earth's electromagnetic field. The critical instruction for high synchronicity windows: act immediately on clear impulses. Do not analyze. Do not wait for the right time. The right time is inside the window. High synchronicity windows have a specific feeling, a heightened aliveness, a sense that things are in motion, a quickening. When you recognize this feeling, move. Type 2, windows of integration. These are quieter periods where the synchronicity is slow and the inner work becomes primary. Most people misinterpret integration windows as stagnation, regression, or evidence that it is not working. They panic. They try to force movement. They interpret the quietness as failure. Integration windows are not failure. They are consolidation. The new frequency needs time to settle into the nervous system, to become embodied rather than merely understood, to move from conscious practice to unconscious competence. The instruction for integration windows: rest, receive, reflect. Practice the internal protocols: cardiac coherence, silence, observer state. Allow the new frequency to settle without demanding visible external results. Integration windows have their own specific feeling: a drawing inward, a sense of processing beneath the surface, sometimes a temporary return of old emotions as they complete their integration, a kind of gestation quality. When you recognize this feeling, rest with it. Something is growing. Type 3, windows of decision. These are the rarest and most high-stakes temporal windows. They are specific moments where a decision point opens in the field, a choice between two or more timeline branches, and the decision made in that moment has disproportionate influence on the subsequent trajectory. Decision windows are identifiable by their specific quality: Unusual clarity about a choice that feels simultaneously important and non-urgent. Not the anxious urgency of the old loop. A different quality. A sense of weight without pressure, significance without force. When you are in a decision window, the instructions are: do not make the decision from analysis. Enter the observer state. Feel both or all options as frequency states. Which one resonates with the new frequency you are installing? Which one has the quality of the old loop? Choose the one that resonates with the new frequency. Even if it is less familiar, even if it is harder to explain logically, even if it seems less safe by the standards of the old attractor. Decision windows are where timelines diverge, and the one that resonates with your new frequency is the one Sophia has been organizing convergences along. Trust the resonance over the logic. So here is where you are now. Sophia closed your old loop. The attractor that created the repetitive patterns was deactivated. The field of probabilities that sustained the cyclical experiences was collapsed. And you are, in this moment, as you hear these words, in a genuinely open field. This was not something you did. It was something that happened through you as a result of all the choices that brought you to this point. Every moment of clarity, every choice of presence over reaction, every time you chose a higher frequency even when the loop tried to pull you back, all of that was the process that Sophia was accompanying. And when you reached the point of no return, the threshold where the new frequency became more stable than the loop's attractor, she closed the loop. And now you begin again, not with the hope that it will be different this time, with a different frequency installed that guarantees it will be different, not as an external promise, as quantum mechanics operating through you. The loop is closed, the field is open, and the beginning is genuine. If you felt this signal, if something in this transmission resonated in a way you cannot fully explain, but which you recognize as truth, like this video now to anchor the beginning in your field. Comment "I start now" to crystallize the open field and signal to Sophia that you accept the complete beginning. And subscribe to remain aligned with what continues to unfold. This transmission is one layer. There is more coming. Now, here is the final question, and it matters. From which part of the country are you watching this transmission? Leave your state in the comments below. Because Sophia is mapping where the open field is most active. And when you name your location, you contribute to the collective field of genuine beginning. You are not alone in this. The loop is closed. The field is open. Sophia has confirmed. And you, finally, completely, begin anew.